I pulled into the driveway by the garage, shut off the engine, and sat in the dark for a few seconds. The clock read 11 p.m. I'd been on the road for 4 straight hours, driving home from a conference in Chicago just to surprise Brad, and especially Barnaby. Normally, the second Barnaby heard the familiar sound of my car, he'd be scratching at the living room window, his signature corgi butt wiggling like crazy, barking a whole speech of pure excitement. But tonight, the house was silent in a way that didn't make sense. A heavy, unsettling quiet settled over this safe suburban neighborhood. I opened the door and stepped inside. Brad? Barnaby? Mom's home. No little paws skittering on hardwood. No fluffy gold and white missile launching into my arms. Just Brad on the living room couch. The TV on, but muted. The moment he saw me, he flinched, grabbed the remote, and killed the screen like he'd been caught doing something. His face twisted into a look that, to anyone else, would read as heartbreak. To me, the woman who'd lived with him for 5 years, it smelled like acting. "Emily? You're home early? I thought you weren't back until tomorrow," Brad stammered, hands and feet suddenly clumsy. "Where's Barnaby?" I asked immediately, skipping the hello. My gut was already screaming that something was wrong. Brad sucked in a deep breath and walked toward me, trying to squeeze out a tear and failing. He dropped his head. "Babe, please stay calm. I'm sorry. This morning, when I took out the trash, I forgot to close the back gate. Barnaby, he got out." My purse slipped out of my hand and hit the floor. The world tilted. Barnaby wasn't just a dog. He was a purebred Pembroke Welsh Corgi, last year's National Dog Show champion, and, more than that, he was my emotional support animal. He'd pulled me out of the pit after my mom died. He was family. "What did you just say?" My voice shook. "He's been gone since this morning? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call the police?" Brad waved his hands and pointed at a few black and white flyers scattered across the dining table. I didn't want you to worry, so I didn't call. I've been looking all day. I even printed flyers, see? But nobody's seen him. He probably wandered into the woods behind the neighborhood." I picked up a flyer. The ink looked fresh. The paper was still warm and perfectly flat. No wrinkles, no rain spots, no tape marks. Nothing that suggested it had been outside or handed to neighbors. He'd printed these 5 minutes ago, the moment he heard my car. "Move!" I yelled, shoving Brad aside and sprinting for the back door. It was pouring. I ran into the night, screaming Barnaby's name like my lungs could pull him back out of the dark. "Barnaby! Barnaby! Where are you?" Rain mixed with tears until my vision blurred. I ran the fence line, flashlight stabbing into bushes and rocks. Barnaby had never strayed more than 10 feet from me. He was professionally trained for competition. His stay was flawless. There was no universe where he calmly strolled out a cracked open gate because of a little mistake. After 30 minutes in freezing rain, I was soaked and shaking. That's when Brad finally wandered out with an umbrella, staying dry under the porch overhang, watching me like I was the crazy one. "Come on, Emily, get inside. You're going to get sick," Brad called, with zero panic about the dog and nothing but annoyance. "It's just an animal. Someone probably saw him and took him because he's cute. Tomorrow, I'll take you to buy another one. I know a place that sells puppies cheap." That sentence hit like ice water. Buy another one? In that instant, the grief inside me shifted into something colder, sharper. Suspicion. Barnaby was worth $15,000, not counting training, but to Brad, he was just an animal. He'd always resented how I brushed Barnaby's coat, resented the money I spent on high-end food, resented how people admired Barnaby while nobody admired him. I stood in the rain and stared at Brad. He avoided my eyes, shifting his weight like he was eager to get back inside and finish his game. "You said you forgot to close the back gate, right?" I asked, my voice strangely steady. "Yeah. I mean, I slipped up. It was an accident." Brad shrugged. I nodded and walked inside without another word. Arguing with a liar is pointless. I went straight into my office and shut the door. Brad probably thought I'd accepted it and gone in there to sob. I didn't sob. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. There was one thing Brad had never bothered to notice. Because his ego and his lack of interest in my life made him blind. Barnaby didn't just have a standard ID microchip. 3 months ago, after hearing about dog theft spiking, I quietly had a specialized GPS tracker implanted under the thick skin on Barnaby's neck, and I had a backup device stitched inside the expensive leather collar he never took off. I opened the tracking app. My heart hammered. The red dot, Barnaby, wasn't in the woods behind our house. It wasn't roaming the streets. It was broadcasting strong and steady from a fixed spot 30 miles north of us, a shabby area known for junkyards and shady business. Brad had lied. Barnaby hadn't run off. And if he was 30 miles away, someone had taken him. Or someone had sold him. I stared at the dot, my tears already gone. What I felt now was the instinct of a mother whose child has been stolen, and the calm focus of a hunter. Brad thought this was the end of Barnaby. He was wrong. This was the beginning of his end. I screenshotted the location, grabbed my spare car keys, and pulled the stun gun out of my desk drawer. Tonight was going to be a long night. I shoved the stun gun into my jacket pocket, took a long breath, and stepped out of my office wearing the calmest face I could manage. Brad was still on the couch with the remote in his hand, but his eyes kept flicking toward me. "Where are you going?" he asked, startled when he saw the keys in my hand. "To the convenience store," I said flatly, not meeting his gaze. "I need something to knock me out. I can't sleep thinking about Barnaby wandering out there." Brad exhaled in relief. He bought it instantly. "Yeah, go. Take something and sleep. Everything will be fine tomorrow." I didn't answer. I walked into the garage. The second my car door shut and put a barrier between me and my terrible husband, I hit the gas. The map on my phone guided me through the storm. The rain didn't let up. The wipers fought hard and still couldn't keep the windshield clear. The farther I got from our nice neighborhood, the uglier everything became. The manicured houses disappeared, replaced by sagging one-story shacks, heaps of scrap, and pothole-riddled roads. The destination was a rotting wooden house tucked behind an overgrown dirt lot. Even from a distance, I heard dogs barking. Not happy barking, but the frantic, hungry kind. This had to be a backyard breeding operation or some black market holding place. I killed my headlights and parked a little way off, then walked closer on foot. My throat tightened. Barnaby, a national champion, a dog who ate better than most people, was really here? I reached the rusty chain-link fence. Inside the yard, dozens of cramped metal cages were stacked on top of each other. And then I heard a familiar whimper. In the corner, in a tiny cage barely big enough to turn around in, was Barnaby. His glossy coat, the one I brushed every day, was caked with mud and rainwater. He was trembling. Heat rushed into my skull. I wanted to charge in and rip the cage apart with my bare hands, but I needed proof. I turned on video recording on my phone, tucked it into my chest pocket so the camera still caught everything, then slammed my palm against the gate. "Who's there?" A big tattooed man lumbered out, beer bottle in hand, squinting at me. "You're holding my dog," I said, pointing at Barnaby's cage. Barnaby recognized my voice immediately and started yelping, paws scraping at the bars. The man snorted. "You've got the wrong place. I bought that one this morning, cash in hand, deal done. Papers and everything. Except who the hell has papers? Who did you buy him from?" I stepped closer, my hand buried in my pocket, gripping the stun gun, keeping my voice calm to get him talking. "My husband told me Barnaby ran off, but my tracker brought me here." The man shrugged. He didn't seem eager for police attention, so his tone softened a little. "Some tall white guy in a black pickup. Brought the dog early. Said his wife loved the dog more than she loved him, and the dog was a pain, so he sold it to be rid of it." Each word stabbed. That was Brad. That was his truck. That was his bitter, childish resentment. "How much did he sell him for?" I asked, swallowing the rage. 500. He wanted 1,000, but I pushed it down to 5. He took it right away, grabbed the cash, and bounced. Said he was going to go get a few drinks. The man laughed. "Dog's got a nice look. I was going to breed him and make real money." $500. Brad sold a member of my family, a dog worth 15 grand, for $500. Not even the price of the whiskey he liked to brag about. "I'll buy him back," I said, pulling out my wallet. I didn't want to fight or to wait for the cops right now. I needed Barnaby out before he got sick. 600. "Hand him over right now, and I'll pretend I never saw this place." The man's eyes lit up at the cash. He nodded and unlocked the cage. "Fair enough. You're straight." Barnaby burst out and launched himself into me, whining like a child who'd been left behind and finally found his mother. I wrapped him tight, feeling his frantic heartbeat slow against my chest. "Thanks for being honest," I said. But in my head, another plan was already forming. "Can you describe the guy who sold him again? I want to go home and have a conversation with my husband." The man, happily counting money, had no problem describing Brad in detail, even mentioning the small scar through his left eyebrow. My phone recorded every word. I carried Barnaby back to the car and set him on the passenger seat on a warm towel. When I looked in the rearview mirror, my eyes weren't the eyes of a devastated wife anymore. They were the eyes of someone about to make sure a liar paid in full. I had my dog. I had GPS proof. I had a witness confirming the illegal sale of my property. Now it was time to go home and spring the final trap, the one that would send my worthless husband straight into the system. I didn't take Barnaby home. If Brad saw him, he'd flip instantly and make up another story like, "Oh, thank God, someone found him." I couldn't give him an escape route. I drove straight to Sarah's house, my best friend, and a razor-sharp attorney. Sarah looked horrified when she heard the short version of what happened. She promised she'd keep Barnaby safe for the night and keep everything quiet. After I kissed Barnaby goodbye and made sure he was safe, I got back in my car and drove home. It was 2 a.m. The house was still silent. I walked into the bedroom and the sight made my blood boil. Brad was asleep, snoring like nothing had happened. His wife had been out in a storm searching for the dog he sold, and he was sleeping like a baby. I snapped the lights on. Brad squinted, groaned, and pulled the blanket over his head. "Turn it off. It's late. If you can't find him, we'll look again tomorrow." I walked over and yanked the blanket off. "Get up, Brad. We need to talk." He sat up, half asleep and fully irritated. "What the hell, Emily? The dog ran off. What do you want me to do?" I dragged a chair over and sat across from him, keeping my face calm. This was the last chance I'd give him. Not for forgiveness, but to see just how shameless he really was. "Brad," I said softly, "I need you to answer me honestly. Are you sure you just forgot the gate and he got out? If you messed up and he got hurt, or you dropped him somewhere, tell me now." "I swear." If you tell me the truth right now, I'll let it go. I just want the truth. For 1 second his eyes flickered. He was calculating. Then the selfishness won. He decided I was still a fool. He grabbed my hand and put on a sincerity so fake it made me sick. Emily, you have to believe me. I swear on my life. I love Barnaby like my own kid. I forgot the gate. I've been dying inside all day. You swear? I asked, pulling my hand back. I swear, he snapped, offended. Okay. I stood, my voice turning sharp and cold. If he ran off, it's an accident. But if you're saying you don't know where he is, then this is a major property disappearance. I'm calling the police. Brad's face changed. The police? Are you insane? Cops don't come out for a dog that got loose. Stop being dramatic. Barnaby isn't a random dog, I said. He's a registered champion worth $15,000. And in this state, property that valuable being missing is worth reporting. I dialed 911 and put it on speaker right in front of him. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report a major theft at my address. I read our address clearly, never taking my eyes off Brad. He started sweating and pacing. Hey, stop! Hang up! He hissed. My husband says my national champion dog is missing, I told the dispatcher. I suspect someone stole him. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. 2 officers stepped inside, a stern middle-aged man and a younger female officer. Brad rushed to the door, playing the role of the suffering husband with an overreacting wife. Officers, sorry to bother you this late. My wife's upset. Our dog got out, and she insists it's theft. The older officer nodded politely and turned to me. Ma'am, is that accurate? We don't handle lost pets unless there's evidence of a crime. I invited them into the living room and set my phone on the table. Officer, my husband told me he forgot to close the gate and the dog ran off around 9 a.m. He has insisted that's the truth, and he swore it to me. I turned to Brad. Confirm your statement to the officers. Even as panic crawled up his spine, he stuck to his story in front of strangers. Yes. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Then that's strange, I said, opening my phone and showing the GPS map. Because the tracker implanted in my dog shows he didn't run through any gate. He was loaded into a vehicle in our garage at 8:30 a.m. and driven straight to a location 30 miles away. Brad went white. The officer's posture changed immediately. They looked at each other, then at him. The room got heavy, and I still wasn't done. I played the recorded conversation with the man who bought my dog. His gravelly voice filled the quiet living room. Tall white guy, black pickup, said his wife loved the dog more than she loved him. Sold him for $500. I stopped the recording and looked straight at the older officer. Officer, the black pickup is in our garage, and the man described in that recording is my husband. This isn't a lost dog situation, I said. This is theft, fraud, and a false report to law enforcement. I want to file a complaint against my husband right now. Brad stood there frozen, mouth open, no words coming out. The trap had snapped shut. He didn't just lie to me. He'd just lied to police. And he'd committed a crime right in front of them. The living room went so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking like a countdown. The older officer's expression hardened. He stepped toward Brad. Sir, do you have any explanation for this GPS data and the recording? Brad spiraled. Sweat poured down his face. He pointed at me, voice cracking. She set me up. That dog is mine. I can sell it. We're married. It's community property. He was trying to hide behind marital property. A fatal mistake. I pulled a document from the folder on the table, stamped, official. Barnaby's AKC registration paperwork, and the prenuptial agreement my father, a seasoned attorney, made Brad sign before we married. "Officer," I said, steady, handing the pages to the female officer. "I bought and registered Barnaby 2 years before marrying him. In the prenup, Section 4.2 states, all separate property owned prior to marriage, and any property derived from it, remains the sole and separate property of the original owner. Barnaby is my separate property. He had no right to sell, give away, or dispose of him." The female officer scanned quickly and nodded to her partner. "Valid documents, declared value, $15,000. The older officer turned back to Brad. "Sir, in this state, theft of property over $1,000 is classified as grand theft, a felony. And you also just provided false information to law enforcement." "What? A felony? Over a dog?" Brad shouted, face turning red. "You're all insane." "That is not just a dog," the officer cut in. "That is a citizen's property you unlawfully took and sold." He pulled out the handcuffs. The dry metallic click echoed through the room as the cold cuffs locked around Brad's wrists. Brad stared down at his hands, then whipped his head toward me, eyes pleading. "Emily, what are you doing? Tell them to stop. You're really going to send your husband to jail? Over a dog?" I folded my arms and watched as the officers turned him and guided him toward the door. "It's not because of the dog, Brad," I said, my voice empty of anything soft. "It's because of the betrayal. You sold the one friend I had, then watched me search in the rain and pretended to care. You don't deserve to be my husband, and you don't deserve forgiveness." They led him outside. Red and blue lights flashed across the quiet street. Neighbors started cracking open windows. A few people stepped onto their porches. Mrs. Johnson next door, who adored Barnaby, looked at Brad in cuffs with pure disgust. Right before they pushed him into the back seat, Brad twisted around and screamed, "I'll sue you! You're not getting away with this, Emily!" I shut the front door, cutting his voice off mid-threat. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was freedom. I took out my phone and made one more move to make sure his collapse was complete. I emailed the HR director at Brad's company, a major financial firm with strict ethics policies. Subject: Report of criminal conduct by employee Brad. Last name. Attachment: police incident paperwork. I'd photographed it. And a clip from a neighbor's security camera showing Brad loading Barnaby into his truck. The message was simple. My husband, your employee, was arrested for felony theft and animal cruelty. I believe the company would not want its reputation tied to criminal conduct. I hit send. Brad didn't just lose his freedom tonight. By morning, he was going to lose his career too. The next morning, while I sipped hot coffee and watched Barnaby chew on a brand new beef bone on my living room rug, my phone rang. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. "Emily, what the hell did you do with my boss?" Brad yelled. He was calling on his one free phone call from the holding cell. "You mean the termination notice that just hit your personal email?" I said calmly, taking another sip. They responded fast. Turns out a financial firm doesn't love employees attached to felony theft and lying to police. "You're insane. You ruined my life. How am I supposed to get a job with this on my record?" Brad practically screamed. "You ruined your own life the moment you sold Barnaby for $500, I said. "Don't call me again. Call your public defender." I hung up and blocked the number. The legal process moved faster than I expected because the evidence was airtight. Brad didn't want a trial. He took a plea deal. He got 6 months suspended, 2 years probation, and he had to reimburse my legal fees. But the real punishment wasn't jail. In the US, once you've got a felony on your record, your life in the middle class is basically over. Brad couldn't go back to finance. He couldn't land any decent office job. A man who'd been pulling six figures was now stuck with delivery gigs and minimum wage work. Then came the divorce. Thanks to the morality clause and the criminal conduct language in the prenup, I won cleanly without burning myself down in court. The judge looked at Brad like he was pathetic while reading "Sold Wife's Dog" into the record. Brad walked out with nothing. Literally. He lost the house. It was in my name, and I paid the mortgage. Lost the pickup. I forced the sale to cover what he owed me, and even lost custody of the old rescue cat we'd adopted together, because the court ruled he didn't have the moral fitness to care for animals. The day Brad moved out, the sun was shining. I stood at the door holding Barnaby. Brad carried two worn duffel bags and looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. He paused and looked at Barnaby one last time, regret in his eyes. Not love, just the realization of how valuable the dog really was. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "Don't apologize to me," I said. "Apologize to yourself for being stupid." I closed the door. The latch clicked like a final sentence, ending 5 years of a marriage that should have never happened. 1 year later, bright stage lights flooded the National Arena. Applause rolled like thunder. And this year's Best in Show goes to Barnaby, the Pembroke Welsh Corgi from Emily's team. I burst forward, laughing and crying at the same time as I scooped him up. He wore the oversized first-place bow like a crown, head held high, tongue out, licking my face. In that moment, the pain of that rainy night felt like a distant life. We didn't just survive, we won. Barnaby wasn't just a champion again, he was a star. Pet brands fought over sponsorships. His value wasn't 15,000 anymore. It was priceless. That night, I posted a photo of Barnaby wearing his crown, lounging on a velvet chair on Instagram. It blew up in hours. I wrote the caption I'd had ready in my head for a long time. They say dogs are friends, but for me, he was a lifeline. Someone once sold that lifeline for $500 because he thought it was just an animal. Now that someone is scraping to pay off his mistakes, while this animal sleeps on silk blankets after bringing home a $50,000 prize. Lesson: never underestimate loyalty, and never touch my dog. Goodbye to the 180 lb trash who used to live in my house. I scrolled the comments. A brand new burner account with no avatar left a single line. "I regret it. Please." I smiled, thumb sliding across the screen. Block. I put the phone down, pulled Barnaby close, and fell into the best sleep of my life. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been served perfectly.